Hello, everyone. I think this is the start. So, welcome to this panel discussion: harmonizing innovation and regulatory oversight in the digital asset landscape. With me, I have an esteemed group of speakers: Sopnendu Mohanty, Chief FinTech Officer at the Monetary Authority of Singapore. He's been in crypto ever since I can remember, so about 10 years. Elizabeth Wong is Director of Licensing and the head of the FinTech unit at the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission, so the Hong Kong SFC. She's been in crypto for about 7 years and has a bunch of content on YouTube. Wylam Kwok is Senior Executive Director and Head of Authorization and FinTech within the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of the Abu Dhabi Global Market, so ADGM. He's been in crypto for 6 years. And Nopnampan Pavasan is Assistant Secretary General in the Thai SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in Thailand, who's been in crypto for 5 years. So adding it all up, we have about 28 years of crypto regulatory experience on this panel, and I'm very excited to ask them to dive into this topic and ask some interesting questions. Just before we do, to get a little bit of personality, can we go around the room very quickly? I'd love to know how you guys keep on top of the crypto industry. I do it as a full-time job. I've been doing it for over a decade, and I still find it a fire hose. I don't know what sources to look at. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, but there's a bunch of newsletters. How do you do it personally, and how do you encourage your staff to stay on top of crypto? We'll start with Sopnendu is in the top left of my screen, so we'll start with Sopnendu.
Well, you put me in spot by opening the question. If I say this one, it will cause some issue for me, I guess. I stopped reading news now on crypto. It is just a fatigue for me now because either we are experimenting too much, or we are speculating too much, or we are how do I say? Or we seem to be in a love and hate relationship with this space, and somehow deep down the system, I find very hard to find a purpose as we look through this for last 10 years. But having said that, what is coming out from this space is, to me, a very solid, robust thinking on technology, thinking around where we should imagine the financial sector. So that's the good part. But staying on top of the crypto industry is more about, for me, take the core concept and the technology and push for creating an opportunity for markets and for use cases where we need to make those changes. So in a nutshell, I really have stopped tracking all the possible news in crypto unless it is a regulatory nature. Of
course. Cool. Thank you, which I assume you get from your lawyers. Elizabeth, how do you stay on top of the industry? And also, if you guys have done any crypto native, if you've done any on-chain transactions in the past recently, I'd love to hear what your latest on-chain transaction was.
Right, I'm a very boring person and I haven't been really crypto native recently. But luckily for me, at the SFC we do have a team looking at, crypto related information. So I do have people looking at news and doing summaries for me. So that's the way that we've been trying to, keep on top of what's happening, to see if there's any trend. But I also agree that our focus would be on anything that needs to be regulated. So it just comes at us. They will come and find us if they want a license, for example. So, and then we'll be presented with very different, and new business models that we might not have seen before. So I think we've been quite good at trying to stay on top of things. And also, I think for the staff who are in our own team, you have to like doing this or else you'll just leave. So far, I have to say I'm lucky. We don't need to really encourage our people to really stay on top, and everybody just tries to stay on top.
It is quite addictive, isn't it?
Hey, Anthony, sorry, I didn't answer your second part of question. Can I come in after this?
Go on then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
So, you asked the question around crypto action. I think I like to bring to, I don't know if you can see this document. It's called Project DESFT. You can Google it if you want to. It is a project we just launched in Ghana, many far away from Singapore, which is focusing on solving a real business problem, connecting the SMEs across the globe doing trade using a combination of combination of a classic digital trade platform where you find your buyers and seller, and using some of the tokenized way of approving the credential of the businesses when they trade among each other, or we call it trusted credential or tokenized credential, and the actual transaction is happening through a wrapper or a purpose bond money, which includes either a CBDC or a tokenized deposit. So we have brought all the three technology principles together to deliver this project for linking a trade between Singapore and Ghana. To me, that's an example which happened last week in Ghana to solve a real world problem using the power of crypto and the power of the whole design, how cryptos are designed to solve a real world problem.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's talk. We can dive into use cases a little later. It'd be nice to unpack that one. Before that, I'd love to hear, Wailum, how do you stay on top of the news? And have you used your MetaMask or any wallets? Have you done anything recently? Have you touched the products?
Yeah, I unlike Stop, actually, I get more and more excited about this space every day. And I suppose most of the education comes from on the job. Being a frontline regulator, the advantage is that I get to actually meet a lot of the people being at the front line, understanding the latest developments, so on and so forth, right? So whether it is regulatory developments, emerging risks, trends, so on and so forth, I get overwhelmed by the kind of potential use case that they're trying to come about. That said, of course, with the recent fallout, we do see some better use cases coming in, and I am very generally excited about that. Outside of that meeting day to day, I try to read out on topics, whether it's textbooks, research papers, white papers, so on and so forth. Like Elizabeth, when it comes to practice, I don't really have much experience. Perhaps only went as far as opening a trading account, set up a hard wallet, buy a few coins just to understand what is it like. But I'm not adventurous. I'm a regulator.
I highly recommend touching the products. It's great.
But interacting with my staff in the larger scheme of things, right? What we have debit is just the tip of the iceberg. In the Web3 economy, where everything is driven by tokens, I do struggle to keep up.
Don't we all? That's why I asked the question. And finally, not Nuampan, how do you do on-chain activities? How do you stay on top of things?
Actually, working with the SEC Thailand. For the SEC Thailand, we prepare for the fintech and including the crypto assets in 2017, and then we come out with the specific law since 2018, and we established the fintech department during that time too. And after 2 or 3 years later, we also have a specific section that including the 3 departments that oversight only for the crypto asset and digital asset, and me and maybe our team to monitor for reading the new and development of the crypto asset and digital asset market. That you know that the thing develops so fast. That's why we have to keep update. And even I think during these 2 or 3 years, many regulators in over the world are focusing more on the crypto asset and their development, and there are also international standard like the IOSCO. That's why we have to keep update on that. And for my team, we have the discussion and then to talk about the policy because everything develops so fast.
Awesome, thank you. And while you're on, and I'll ask this to everyone as well. So the context for this next question, achievements, is that it's tough being a regulator. The industry wants answers now, but you have to be, and they want favorable answers, but you have to take a lot to juggle, and you've got a lot of considerations to work through. But if someone said, what have you achieved recently as a regulator? What would be the last thing your organization, we'll stick with you, not Nuampan. What was the last thing your regulation has achieved with respect to digital asset regulation that you're pretty happy with? And this is an opportunity to kind of show everyone who may have missed that news?
Okay, actually, as I said earlier, that we have specific law on the digital assets since 2018, and until now we have 3 success of an ICO project. According to this law, we have 3 types of digital asset: the investment token, that the token offer for fundraising. This is other country will be considered it as security, but for Thailand we have the separate law. And another kind of the token is the utility token and cryptocurrency, which is other may known as crypto asset. That's why we have investment token with its security in other country, and then the crypto asset. For this law, we have 3 success case: the issuing of the investment token to raise fund to invest in like the real estate, like the office building and the condominium. The token holder will get the stream of income and revenue sharing from the rent of the office building and condominium as a return. And another associate project is just like to raising fund to invest in the movie project, and the token holder get the return as the revenue sharing together with some utility benefits, like to go to see the movie and the right to have the name at the end credit of the movie. And now we have 21 crypto asset business operator. That include exchange broker, dealer, investment advisor, and fund manager. We also have license for custodian. However, at the moment, we still don't have any person apply for the custodian this time. However, this is a thing that for Thailand, we concerned about that because we hope to have custodian in Thailand. And we concerned about the asset of the customer to like if they keep overseas. That's why we expect that in this year we may have like 1 or 2 custodian license in Thailand. They are in the process of consultation.
Got it. Cool. Thank you. So my takeaway was that you've got the framework in place since 2018. There's an investment, there's tokens can be classified as investment tokens or utility tokens. You've got some 21 licensed operators, including exchanges, advisors and others. And you've got this framework, you've got a framework for a custodial license, and people are starting to consult to start to apply. Awesome. Great achievements. Let's go, Elizabeth. So thank you, Elizabeth. What have you guys achieved in recently that you're proud of?
Right. So we've issued 2 circulars on tokenization back in November last year. So through these circulars, we provided guidance to intermediaries on when they engage in tokenized securities related activities. So our focus was on the tokenization of traditional financial instruments. So what guidance we gave was on how to manage new risks. So when we talk about new risks, we're talking about, those risks that are not typically associated with traditional securities. So it's more like the new risks that arise from the use of technology. So this could include, ownership risks. So how is ownership interest being recorded and also transferred, and also, technology risks. So what happens if there's a blockchain network outage and other cybersecurity risks? So that was one very recent thing that we did in relation to digital asset regulations. Another one, I think a lot of people have also heard about it, is that we announced an authorization regime for funds investing in crypto. So this included crypto spot ETFs back in December 2023. And since then, we've already authorized 6 crypto spot ETFs, which were listed on our stock exchange in Hong Kong in April this year.
Yeah, a few, I think 3 Bitcoin and 3 Ethereum.
Yes.
ETFs. Great. We'll come back to that because that's pretty exciting. I think a lot of people are just focused on the US ETFs, but it's good to see that there's more listed instruments that can be invested all around the world. We've had them in Europe, Scandinavia for a while, I think. Now we're seeing them more widely. Wai Lum, thank you, Elizabeth. Wai Lum, what have you guys done recently that you're proud of?
Well, it's odd to say this with the fallout from FTX. One would imagine that there's going to be quite a fair bit of enhancements to be made to our regulatory regime, but it wasn't the case. When we first introduced our framework in 2018, we spoke to various industry players to understand the potential use cases and the needs of the industry. For example, there are players who will need price discovery, and that means that there will be a need for exchanges and broker-dealers for both spot and derivatives. there are players who need to ensure that their digital assets are secured from cyber threats before they venture into this space. That means that there will be a need for custodians. There are players who want to invest in cryptos. That means there will be a need for fund managers and asset managers. And there are players who want to use stablecoins as a payments instrument. That means that there will be a need for payments intermediaries. So what it tells us is that crypto ecosystem may not be so different from the TradFi ecosystem. Eventually, what we did was to just extend our regulatory approach from TradFi to cover crypto. So not much changes in the last 12 months, but that said, we did launch a purpose-built framework for DLT foundations, providing legal recognition and clarity for blockchain foundations and DAOs. For example, the framework explicitly provides for the issuance of governance tokens and the use of smart contracts to facilitate a variety of governance models. We have also seen strong interest in institutional players along certain themes. In response to that feedback, we plan to provide some clarity on the way certain Web3 products are being treated under our regulations. For example, instruments such as Web3 tokens, simple agreement for future tokens, token warrants that hedge funds and VCs are looking to invest out of ADGM. So those are things that we plan to provide greater clarity in the next few months.
Awesome. Well, things to look forward to, we'll do at the end. So we'll keep the audience on, and at the very end, we'll tease them with some upcoming items. Sopnendu, you know, we've been in the industry in Singapore together for over a decade. I'm proud of what we've managed to achieve here. What would you say were the highlights in the past 12 months coming from MAS?
Well, Anthony, I think to us, from a regulatory standpoint, our biggest, I'll not say achievement, as I'll say our biggest recognition to this space was when we recognized the role of stablecoin. And if you have observed that announcement, it says MAS regulated stablecoin. It clearly showed that regulators have stepped up their intent in helping this new ecosystem to grow, because this stablecoin becomes a key connector between fiat and the digital asset ecosystem. So the MAS has produced a framework under which you can issue stablecoin in Singapore. It's a single currency stablecoin issuance framework, either to Singapore dollar, to any G10 currencies issued in Singapore. And of course, if you're issued in Singapore, you got to follow some 4 key regulatory requirements, from value stability to capital to redemption at par and disclosure. And to me, this is a huge leap in regulatory consideration in this space. And it is almost a clear recognition that an alternate form of currency has a space as we design this ecosystem. The second I would highlight, we have further tightened our own regulation under the Payment Act, where we introduced further user protection in case of custody and exchange services and cross-border payments. And that pretty much went one step further to tighten some of the remaining weakness, especially on the custody side. So we had 2 interesting regulations. One, very forward-looking, making stablecoin as part of the currency set, which can be used in this digital asset space. And the other was directionally a much more tighter control on the ecosystem component of digital asset, which is custody and payments.
Absolutely. Thank you. So thank you very much, Dr. To sum this up, I'm hearing custody twice, big focus. I think that's after exchanges go wrong. I'm hearing tighter regulations. I'm hearing new regulations for foundations and DAOs from ADGM, focus on TradFi instrument tokenization in Hong Kong, and in Thailand, the focus is it's the custodial focus now that we've got the investments and utility framework up. Excellent, good stuff. Thank you. It's interesting to see that there are similarities and differences in approach, which leads me on to our next topic of competing priorities and why it's hard to be a regulator. So financial stability, consumer protection, innovation, industry growth, jurisdictional reputation. How do you think about these competing priorities? Anyone can take the floor for this, and then someone else can butt in.
Okay, maybe I can share first that for this one, actually for Thailand, for ACC Thailand, we try to balance between supporting innovation and investor protection. That the investor protection is our priority. And for this crypto asset or digital asset world and market, we support the use of innovation, particularly in like for fundraising and to providing the service. However, we still concerned about the speculation in the crypto asset. That's why our regulation focusing like on to encourage the people to use technology for fundraising, like to issue the ICO. However, on the other hand, in the crypto asset, we have some specific regulation apart from like the capital adequacy, the anti-money laundering regulation. We also require the crypto asset business operator to notify the risk and warning the investor before the trading. And the retail investor have to do the knowledge test before investing or trading in crypto asset. And actually only for the cryptocurrency, it's not allowed to publicly advertise in the public space, except for the official channel of the business operator. And I think for Thailand, it's same as other country that we are based on the principle of the same risk, same regulatory outcome. And we have digital asset law 6 years already. And I think for this time, we review the law. And in the future, we will move the investment token to be security under security law. Now in the process of reformation.
Thank you. Who's next?
Anthony, if I can, one thing I want to bring on the competing priorities. Actually, on the MAS perspective, and this is from a central bank perspective, that there is a recognition that we got to provide a form of currency which is suitable for digital asset space. That's clear in our heads. I think from a priority perspective, there is no competition there. I presume most central banks around the world have come to an agreement that we got to provide an alternate currency design to operate in digital asset space. So that's a very good news. In fact, I would go one step further. If you all have a chance to read the latest paper from BIS called Finternet, which clearly outlined that the current payment infrastructure is inadequate. There's a need to develop an alternate or enhanced payment architecture, which involves tokenization as a core architecture. So definitely central banks have accepted that there is a step forward, and the step forward is tokenization and digital assets. So that's good news. Now, to provide that particular design to succeed, there's a place for tokenization of currencies. Having that focus of helping financial institutions to tokenize their currency, the deposit, allowing either a bank or a non-bank to issue a stable coin is a key part of our priority to ensure that this alternate currencies becomes a key enabler of the digital asset economy. To me, that's a priority from a central bank perspective, because you got to get that out of the way so that that this new economy can grow. Well, on the it's a privately issued money. I think at this point we are under a over regulatory. Our regulation is now much more clamped down on the retail side. We have progressively tightening because there's a huge exposure to scamsters and fraudsters in this space. So, and including money laundering. So I think as long as collectively we all, I think all regulators work to clamp it down, I think on the balance, we should not have any competing priorities. We should have a common priority to build an alternate platform for digital asset to grow.
Thank you. It's interesting. You're talking about stable coins in a lot of your answers. This is really telling. And I think MAS is probably one of the few regulators that's so far ahead in terms of thinking about this. Wai Lum, same question to you. That there are, and especially actually, I'm gonna ask about the UAE, because some listeners may not be familiar with how the region, how the country operates. You've got a number of regulators, a number of emirates. So how do you, firstly, how do you think about competing priorities within your own ecosystem? And then secondly, how do you think about your neighboring regulators that some people may be making a decision? Do I go to Dubai? Do I go to Abu Dhabi? If I'm thinking of moving to UAE? So shed some light on that. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. I think for most of the industry looking at our landscape for the first time, they might actually find it a bit confusing because there are a few regulators governing different jurisdictions and emirates. And I think this is what it is. It originated from different states, different backdrops. So today we are where we are today because of that starting point. But that said, I think the objective is pretty similar in the sense that we want to see how best to support responsible innovation, right? So the priorities that you mentioned, they have always been there. It's not new. It's been a core and core of financial services industry. The evolution of regulatory landscape in the last century is really a manifestation of policymakers revamping or fine-tuning the balance along the way. Sometimes we get it wrong, but hopefully we get it right most of the time. So for us in UAE, right, each jurisdiction deals with these priorities. How each jurisdiction deals with these priorities, I think, is contextual. And we don't see ourselves necessarily competing because there are different strengths for each of the jurisdictions. There are certain target focus areas that jurisdictions look towards to attracting. So I think Sop mentioned about stable coins, and that is indeed something which we are very, very excited about because think of what Bitcoin has failed terribly in the past. All of a sudden now you have an alternative currency to power the digital economy, the DeFi apps, so on and so forth, which in the past was never possible. So stablecoin for us, very, very exciting. The philosophy for us when you deal with responsible innovation is really the question of, does the innovation bring about a compelling benefit? Right? The next question is, how do we make it work to ensure the associated risks are addressed and mitigated? And if we can, well and fine. If we can't, is there scope for us to start small and evolve and scale along the way? So, and if we so decide on the innovation, what kind of capabilities do we need to regulate the innovation? How do we drill ourselves to make decisions about the innovation? So I think at the end of the day, it is not that difficult in terms of a series of considerations to arrive at a conclusion. And I think definitely when it comes to the compelling case of stablecoins, how it can serve the global south, it is a very clear-cut example that is something which we should make it work.
Well, thank you. So the reason is, so to reiterate that, for new people, the reason may seem confusing, but if they dig in, you'll find that you're not necessarily competing. There's different strengths, and it's great to hear that ADGM is also interested in stablecoins. I love it when regulatory agencies compete to innovate. It allows for some fun. Elizabeth, do you have any thoughts on this, on competing priorities, or are you echoing others?
I think in relation to, competing priorities, being a regulator always means that you need to, conduct a balancing act. So it's really part of the job. But I think it's becoming quite clear that, and I think the crypto industry also acknowledges that regulation is necessary. So we have always been a firm believer in regulation, and we think it supports responsible and sustainable development. And what we've always done is that if we decide to regulate, we then regulate it from the overarching principle of seeing whether, that same business model exists in traditional finance. And then we just use the same kind of rules to regulate similar activities in the crypto industry. So that's why from day one, we've already been regulating the space from investor protection perspective, rather than just, anti-money laundering or just payments. So we've issued clear guidelines, and I think this is also a way to, help the industry because we give regulatory certainty. So I think the balancing act really comes in when we need to come up with really crypto-specific requirements. And I think that's when we need to really maintain close dialogue with industry so we can understand the practicality of the requirements that we intend to implement.
Yeah, and you can only do that if you understand the technology deeply, because some things are just different in crypto. So some things are different in crypto than TradFi. Other things are exactly the same. So same risk, same regulation is what I'm hearing. Awesome, thank you. So look, we've heard four different but overlapping views here. One of the title of the panel, this panel is Harmonizing Innovation and Driving Oversight in the digital asset landscape. So do you see a pathway for the harmonization of rules, or in putting crypto terms, when harmonization? Who's got a view on this? I have a specific view, so maybe I'll say it, and then you can argue against me. I don't think there'll ever be harmonization. I think they'll always, I think jurisdictions will always compete based on their priorities, perhaps for talent, perhaps for business. The harmonization will be tricky, but I think there are some good counter arguments to that as well. Wylam, you look like you want to speak.
Yeah, I beg to differ, right? The
Awesome.
time frame you're looking at is really just 10 years, right? But as you look at the last 100 years, how the regulations have evolved, it is that journey, right, of allowing the regulators to come together, take lessons from crisis, and formulate new policies and sharpen the tools, right? So without a doubt, I think harmonization is the way to go. Otherwise, there will be regulatory arbitrage, and you end up in operating an inefficient system of isolated structures. Today, the international standard-setting bodies like the IOSCO, BCBS, FSB, they're already taking the lead to bring about greater harmonization, starting with high-level outcome-based principles and recommendations that would allow jurisdictions the time and space to calibrate their respective regimes. In due course, I think as we get more sophisticated as a regulatory community, we will achieve better resolution and more specific calibration in the recommendations. So definitely, I think it's a matter of just your time frame is probably a bit too short, but it is already starting the journey of regulatory convergence.
So in crypto terms, we need to zoom out. Sopnendu.
Yeah, I would say this. I mean, I am partially. I'm unlike Wylam. I'm partially in agreement with you that partially disagree. I'll say why. I think there are certain part of the regulation which will require almost non-negotiable harmonization. AML, KYC, cross-border payments, recognizing instrument like stablecoin, tokenized deposit requires, which has a global impact. But there will always be competition, not from a central bank regulation per se. There'll be competition on other factors where a particular industry want to grow. And it has nothing to do with central bank. It will purely where it's located. There are taxation, there are other incentives, talent access, geographical, economic opportunity that will drive competition. But from a regulatory lens, competition will not be there because it requires harmonization by design. And if you can't harmonize, no industry, no center is going to succeed.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're mostly agreeing with Wylam there on the regulatory side, and then I think you're saying that the competition actually comes from other things, not specifically the rules, right?
Yeah.
Elizabeth or not Rampan?
I share the same view. So harmonization for rules, definitely, but competition, it's not even limited to crypto. It could be anything. Competition will always, exist between different jurisdictions. But for the rules, I think we're getting there. There's so many different, international regulatory, bodies that are looking at this. And what we've been seeing is that a lot of different jurisdictions are really coming up with, new kinds of regimes to regulate the space. So, and you can see the focus is now on investor protection. So I think you should give it a little bit of a longer time frame, and I think we'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Arthur that I think nowadays many regulators in other jurisdictions have harmonized some principle, and yet we have like IOSCO standard like Wylam mentioned, and also I think many are focusing on like the same risk, same regulatory outcome. Even we may have different law or detailed regulation, but for principle like investor protection, money laundering, or even for the stablecoin, I think many regulations are quite in line with each other. And like other people said, like about the stablecoin, you can see that many regulators like come out with the standard and the guideline this time, and Actually, for Thailand, we capital market regulator. That's why we not deal with the payment or with, financial stability directly. But we have to work closely with the Bank of Thailand, the money market regulator. And now I think that today we don't have the Bank of Thailand, right? But we work closely with them, and now they're concerned about the stablecoin and also the financial stability. That's why for SEC Thailand now we have the law that for the crypto asset or other kind of cryptocurrency, it not can be used as the mean of payment, and the business operator cannot facilitate the use of crypto asset as the mean of payment, except that for that's allowed by the Bank of Thailand. It means that this time the Bank of Thailand they have like the sandbox, the regulatory sandbox scheme to allow to use the technology in payment and maybe in the stablecoin in the future. That's why we work together with that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think the overarching message is, the private sector is always very aggressive and short on time, but the message is harmonization will come slowly, and the private sector just needs a little bit of patience, and can help to feed in. Great. We'll switch topics now. Thank you. Now, some may say that fintech, do you remember fintech sandboxes? I remember those things. I'm old enough to remember those things. Some may say that these were fintech fad. Others say they're a trend. I guess if you've run sandbox, I know some of you have, Sopnendu, you were mentioning something that's come out of your sandbox. If others, at the top of the call, if others have something to share in terms of just very briefly what you've learned from these and what come out, we'd love to hear your success stories and learnings. So Sopnendu, why don't we start with you and just recap briefly your favorite outcome? Yeah.
Well, I think the sandbox went its own process of discovery. I mean, sandbox had its own sandbox to start with. In my wisdom of sandbox over the last 9 years is that there are two kinds of sandbox. There's a sandbox which is called regulatory sandbox, and there's a sandbox which is called a public sandbox, things like API exchange in Singapore, which allows industry to experiment in a safe environment without a regulatory conflict. Really, the question for in this context is the regulatory sandbox, and the different jurisdictions have approached it in a different way. But the key difference has been always whether a regulator is willing to accept something on sandbox with real customer in transaction, or want to have a company in sandbox with no real customer, just trying out things in a test environment. My take has been Singapore's, not by design, but by pure luck, that we went with this idea of having in the regulatory sandbox with real customer in context. That really helped us to understand our policy thinking relatively better and faster in terms of responding to policy change. So that's on the sandbox side. I'm trying to be quick on this question. But out of sandbox came something quite interesting, that there is a need for a more almost like activist type regulatory intervention in taking things out of sandbox and putting into production, what I call as a industry-wide sandbox, where you put something in the production, where you bring banks and do something to try out a new idea. Good example to that would be things like Pay Now. When Pay Now started, we had banks player was participated in this network. Then after some time, we added non-bank players. Similarly, for the data exchange platform, we started with banks data being used as a common exchange platform. Then we added insurance data. Then we added stock exchange data. So there is this broader, not necessarily called a sandbox, but an experiment by design. You put a pilot project in production, then you expand it to a full production scale in infrastructure. So sandbox really gave regulatory bodies a strength to experiment faster than the policy declaration. So to me, that's the single biggest lesson advantage.
So your win is speed, right? This gives people
speed, and also allow regulators to have cultural shift from putting a policy before experiments.
Right. So allowing people to try things. Thank you. And then you mentioned the project at the beginning of the call. Does anyone else have any projects that have come from your sandboxes that you want to show the world?
Actually, for Thailand, we introduced sandbox scheme for security business since 2019. But for digital asset and crypto asset scheme, we introduced it this year, and we allow to the sandbox scheme like for all the license that we have. And for another thing that, as I mentioned earlier, that Bank of Thailand have sandbox on programmable money. And for the activity that in digital asset, sometimes it's overlap between the regulated activity of Bank of Thailand and then the SEC. When they do some like programmable money under the sandbox of the Bank of Thailand, some activities may fall under the regulation of the SEC, like for the dealer or the custodian. That's why for the SEC, we have like the co-sandbox with the Bank of Thailand, that we have one stop of the service, like for the operator to come for consultation about what activity that they want to do, and then they can apply the sandbox to the Bank of Thailand and to the SEC at the same moment of the time, and it's more convenient for the business operator, and that's why we work together with the Bank of Thailand, and now we introduce this kind of sandbox this year.
Awesome. So new type of sandbox in Thailand. Thank you. Hong Kong or Wylam, Elizabeth?
Right. We do have a sandbox. We have one for our fintech, businesses, and
Yeah.
I think the one that we have in Hong Kong is very much different from what other regulators have implemented. So from our
Aha. So we're using the same word to mean different things.
We're using the same word, but
Funny
I
that.
think
Okay. Tell us more. Yeah.
I think what we're doing is the opposite. So what we do is that we discuss with applicants exactly what their business model is, and then we work with them on the regulations that we think should apply. And again, same business, same risk, same rules. We adopt them from traditional finance. And then what happens is that we actually make them have to fully comply with all our requirements, and then they go into the sandbox. So when they're in the sandbox, what we're doing is actually we're going to see if the set of rules that is actually based from traditional finance, how it applies to the firm, whether it can apply, and whether it is actually working. And if it works, then they can leave the sandbox and carry on their business at a bigger scale. So what happens in the sandbox is actually it's not, you don't have to comply with anything. You have to comply with everything, and then we monitor you and see if it works. If it works, then you can go on to do a bigger scale of your business.
So instead of testing, you're kind of testing the regulations and testing the business at the same time and seeing if they're compatible.
Yeah.
Yeah, before they grow up and released from the sandbox. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm actually unfamiliar with sandboxes in the UAE. Please.
Right.
There.
Well, we launched ours in 2016 November. So, but I think the two greatest things that have come out of that program, and I think it is one of the most important decisions that we made to introduce the sandbox. The two things that sort of got out from that was first and foremost the ability to help us shape and inform our policy making decisions, and that is essentially Sopnendu's point about informing us about policy implementation, shaping and honing our policies. The second thing that was almost like an unexpected benefit was from the lessons learned, we realized that we need to develop technology to supervise technology. And that's where we think that the regulatory technology capabilities that we're going to build in-house is essential to pave ourselves for us to regulate this space. Let me just give you an example, right? The first sandbox that firm that we dealt with in the digital asset space was actually one firm that offers programmable compliance in the way you move, issue, and store digital assets. And you basically program that rules and regulations into the smart contract. But it does give us an inspiration that technology can be used to better supervise the space. And just look at the example of stablecoins, right? Very early on, we talked about the need to demonstrate proof of reserves. So we developed a solution where we are able to monitor real time, right, by pulling APIs from the banks, by pulling on-chain information oracles of the stablecoins in circulation. pulling accounting systems, data from the accounting systems of the firm, do real-time reconciliation. So we don't have to rely on third-party attestation, which we do require, but in the real time, we're actually able to assure ourselves that everything is quiet, peaceful, and we're able to sleep in the middle of the night, right? Without having to tell the world that the reserves are there, right? So I think these are things that as a regulator, we can add a lot of value. But to be able to add value, you do need to build up the technology capabilities yourself and embrace technology.
Fascinating. And of course, we can show proof of reserve for on-chain assets because public blockchains are all public. It's getting the proof of what's in the bank accounts that's harder because that's not transparent and public. That's the challenge. Is that side of things. And I suppose, and how much you owe your customers, which is the other side of the balance sheet if you're on exchange. Awesome. On this same theme of using technology to supervise technology, we got to get these buzzwords in, guys. Is anyone using or thinking about using AI, artificial intelligence, for their supervisory activities, whether that's on-chain or with the banks more broadly? Sorry, banks and other licensed entities, not just banks. Anyone using AI yet?
In the context of crypto
or generally as a supervisor? I'm sure you've been pitched many ideas from AI startups. Are we there yet?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are definitely a huge range of ideas in play of supervisors using AI in their work. I would say that part of the work was always there. And as you know, in Singapore, we have two major programs running on AI being used as a supervisory tool. One is Project Veritas, which looks at creating an open source toolkit for banks to use AI to ensure that AI itself is not fair or unethical or is accountable or transparent. And there's also another project called MindForge, which is using also an open source project, which allows industry to use different toolkit to ensure that the GenAI implementation is also conforming to the principles of fairness, accountability, and transparency, or the FEED principle, fair, ethical, and accountability and transparent. So definitely AI has taken a big mainstream technology thinking within regulatory bodies to implement within the supervisory function or risk monitoring or bank itself. When they implement this AI, it is being done responsibly.
Awesome. So we're starting to see this convergence of use of different technologies to help supervise.
I just want to pitch there. Without a doubt, I agree. AI is so important in our day-to-day ongoing supervision, and we are going big internally for ADGM. Let me just give an example, right? I mean, today, roughly, in the TradFi space, we are already using machine learning AI to sort of detect suspicious transactions, right? So in the crypto world, you can probably do the same as well. But to even reach that stage to monitor, right, I think there's certain foundational building blocks that you need to put in place. So what we did sometime in 2022, we started to digitalize all our rules and regulations such as it's machine readable. And the example of that capability would allow the smart contracts, for example, to interact with those machine readable regulations. So with the smart contract, you can detect and update block list real time, right? And as and when your rule changes, for example, your collateral requirements need to increase from 2% to 5%, the smart contract will be able to read your rules and regulations and then be able to implement it automatically. And AI would be able to write on that foundation to detect anomalies and so on and so forth. So the potential is just huge. The traditional application is really just using OpenAI to sort of help you extract information, create, do the heavy lifting in terms of sifting information, analyzing, so that you free up the resources to do the value judgment call, so on and so forth. But I think AI in terms of analyzing data and supervising the firm preemptively and in real time, that has so much potential.
And for Thailand, we can say that we are in the initial stage of using AI in supervision because before we use AI, we need data first, and now we just collect. We already have the some kind of about to collect the data. And now that we use the AI, we use it like to identify or and detect some suspicious transaction. However, the officer have to review it and in-depth analyze it again. AI is just the tool to help at the initial stage at this time.
Right. In Hong Kong, well, at the SFC, we are also looking into, how to use AI, and other kinds of technology to enhance our supervisory work and monitoring work. I think we've been using some sort of AI to do some sort of surveillance as well, especially in the crypto space. So we're looking at, unlicensed activities, scams, and everything. We do think that AI will play a big role. It has been around. I think most recently it would be more of a focus on Gen AI, and that too we're also looking at, and also looking at how our firms are using it, and to see whether we need to provide guidance in relation to how firms are using it to provide services to clients. How do they ensure accuracy or fairness to clients and all that. So it is a topic that we are also looking closely at.
Excellent. I'm glad we warmed up on that question. In the beginning, everyone paused for a bit. I was like, oh my God, they're not even using AI yet. Fantastic. Look, we've only got a few minutes left. We've talked about the history. We've talked about what's happened in the recent past. We've talked about the now, and looking into the future. Tell me a little bit. So 2 questions to each of you. Just 1 minute each, if possible. So firstly, what can we expect from your org in the next 12 months? Are there any dates that people should look forward to, whether it's regulations dropping or consultation papers or anything important that people should put in their diaries? And secondly, sell me a little bit. You're from different jurisdictions. Why should a crypto startup move to your jurisdictions? You don't have to badmouth other people. You can just say why your particular jurisdiction is the best. Stop your laughing. I'll start with you. So 2 questions. What can we expect in the next 12 months? And what kind of companies should move to Singapore?
Well, let me take the easy one as the second question, which is yes. I think there will be, as I said, there will be competitions not from the regulators, but from other aspect of taxation, taxation, strength of universities, R&D, location, geographical location, and also the economic growth. If you look at Asia, among all the countries around the world, and most of us in Asian economy now, except Weil is from Asia, but he's sitting in a different economic zone. Asia is the only place in the world where you will see a GDP growth of some relevance. So the one market has got a lot of problem to be resolved is in Asia. So if you are sitting in Asia, there's a natural advantage of being a market of choice for most of the fintech companies. So that's on the competition side, sell me strategy. So on the announcement, I have a specific thing to share. As you know, Project Guardian and Global Layer 1 is marching on, which is actually our biggest focus now is to announce a consortium of banks and regulators coming together to build an interoperable framework for the network to operate where you can issue tokenized deposit, issue CBDCs, issue stablecoin, and then allow banks to then build their own use cases of whether it is a transaction services or whether it is paying for their own client money. And then banks can go ahead and use that at a scale to do their traditional banking services, which is transaction services, payment services, and corporate settlement using this new asset class. So our focus is to announce that, and we're hoping between the 0.0 forum in Zurich in August 1st, and also at the annual summit of IMF and World Bank in DC, and at the Singapore FinTech Festival, you will see a layered announcement of this Global Layer 1 and Project Guardian coming together to establish a common framework for banks to interoperate their network on which digital asset being used or issued, including central bank issuing their digital currencies.
Awesome, thank you. You're the best promoter. Nopnan Pan, what next 12 months and why should someone come to Thailand?
Okay,
and then we'll go Wylum and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, for the next 12 months, I expect there will be more ICO projects using the investment token as a fundraising. And now we introduce the green ICO project. We will hope that we will have that success project at that time. And also, we also encourage the use of technology in traditional finance, like the to digitization or tokenization of traditional financial products like bond. And also, we think that we will have like the custodian license in Thailand. This will be more protection of our customer and assets of the customer. And now we're working closely together with the combined with the digital asset business operator. And we also work closely with each other for the policy that is the proper for the business, but in the same time is proper for investor protection, that we hope that we will have like the sustainable growth of the digital asset industry. And I think for Thailand, as I already mentioned that we have specific law on stock asset like 6 years already, and I think our industry is quite mature this time. We have 21 operator already, and we hope that for Thailand, our government and even for the SEC and other regulator support the technology, the use of innovation, including in the financial sector. And however, for as a regulator, we also like to have some rules to like investor protection, but it will be balanced with the innovation and the business practice.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got 1 minute left. Wylam? Then Liz.
Well, in the next 12 months, we are going to release a consultation paper on our updates to our stablecoin regime. And in Q4, we're probably going to release a consultation paper on regulating staking and DeFi activities. And then, of course, why UAE, why ADGM? I suppose if you are looking to be a force for good to impact the industry, and you're looking for accessible and open-minded regulator to work with in coming up with sustainable solutions, I think you should come to ADGM.
There we go. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Elizabeth?
Right.
Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong, we are working on a consultation on crypto OTC regime and also on the stablecoin regime. So I think in the next 12 months, you will hear more about these, probably conclusions and also, clearer regulatory frameworks. We are also, in Hong Kong, we have quite a few tokenized money pilot programs. So again, this is the other side of the spectrum. So we're experimenting with tokenized money, how it can be interoperable, how it can achieve atomic settlement, for example. So why Hong Kong? Because we have regulatory certainty, and we also have a lot of experiments going on, and that's what there's a lot of things happening in Hong Kong.
I agree. Sorry. Guys, thank you. Look, everyone's doing stablecoin consultations and regimes. This is very interesting. Guys, thank you very much indeed. So to wrap, I'd like to thank you as speakers for sharing your expertise. Thank you to the audience for your interest. And if this would be interesting to your colleagues, there will be a QR code on SCB's Facebook page, which you can scan for reruns. And for those watching live, please stick around for the next session, which is starting in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.